He can't take much more of this.
He won't have to. Things will move quickly now that the exorcism's been approved. Father Gordon's already on his way.
David! Where is he?
David! How'd you do?
A puppy. We got a puppy.
I believe I need a seat.
I believe you're drunk, sir.
Need you to stay here. Round up the usual suspects. I'm going to start with Buford. See what he has to say. Then I'm going to go to the woods.
Why?
Try and prevent another bear attack.
Hey everyone, I am really happy to have a very special guest with me today. We both happen to sit for a portrait separately but together at a local art gallery, but the famous, infamous, fabulous Paul Wilson, multi-talented actor, singer, has his own band, has his own studio, is starring in so many films, which we'll talk about very soon. But let's just introduce Paul Wilson.
Well,
Welcome.
hi.
Welcome.
Hi.
I was talking to you before we backstage here about your smile, that I feel like you should have done like a lot of, toothpaste commercials, and the winning smile. It was kind of like I did pageants back in the day, and my smile was kind of my secret weapon. Like, I feel like your smile gets a lot of work for you along with your talent.
That's funny. My agents call it the weaponized smile,
See?
I think it's fantastic. I mean, it's not my fault. I mean,
No, you were born with it.
My big old horse teeth, but and they're all real. So there's that.
That's amazing. That's in itself is amazing. But it is true. You have a really special smile. I know that sounds crazy, but when I started acting, my father would always say, you have to have the it factor, that you don't know what it is. It's the it factor. And that, I feel like, along with your talent, is like, you're not going to, you're going to leave an impression on people with the smile. And that's a big deal.
I like making people happy. I like having fun, I mean, Rhonda, come on. What are we doing this for? We're not doing it for the money. We're doing it for the fun, right?
I don't know. You and your family. So, okay, Paul, Patrick, Mark, and do you have a sister? Or
No, it's just Larry, Bo, and Curly. That's it, baby.
That's pretty amazing. I was speaking to Gene, our producer, about, your father being iconic, but he said your mama was the theater buff. Did she push you guys or just gave you the love of theater?
That's it. You used the word. That's the word, the operative word, love. She allowed us, first of all, she still teaches voice, singing to a bunch of kids. She's always loved that. And I think it comes from her when she was, if she was on here, she'd tell you, she was 14 years old when she first learned to play the organ in this Episcopal church. And I think it was Greenville, South Carolina or Virginia. And next thing you know, we arrived and we were singing in her churches, in her choirs. So it was always music. So, and music's a funny thing for the Wilson family because, and music is very structured and very logical, but also kind of expands, right? Everything. So that was like the baseline for allowing us to, and this is probably not the right way to say it, but, singing in church for us as kids, well, that was performing.
We were used to
that, right? And then the fellowship and being around people. And it's like, this is kind of fun. And it's like
it's a great way. And so many famous musicians started in church. So many started in church.
Yeah. I mean, her mom, my gosh, her mom was the queen, and then, but for us, it was just allowing us to just kind of find our own creative way,
and perform. So do all three yes, you're in the band. It's the Wilson Van, right?
Yes.
And you do covers of Van Halen. Which is
amazing.
We
do all kinds of fun. It's all, and by the way, we can get into that later, but that was like a lark. That was, we never even had a name. We were named only the first time, the so-called band, which is just so fun to talk about because we all we wanted to do was just share the music and have fun with our friends. And it started with a birthday party for Mark, our middle brother, who's 18 months younger than me, and about 15 years ago. And he, All of a sudden, people showed up, and all of a sudden, the
That's
media
so
showed up.
good.
And all of a sudden, it was like
That's-
Van Wilson. They called us Van Wilson
Van
because we play a lot of
Wilson,
Van Halen, right?
That is
And we're like,
amazing.
that sounds like a cover band. We're not really a cover band. I mean, we love that music, but it's always just sharing that. So that was,
And it's so good that you guys, what I love is that, I came from a family and nobody else is in the entertainment business but me, but they were still competitive. My family, I mean, I'm the baby of like 4 and they're all older, but everybody's competitive. So there was no competitiveness. It was all just loving between all 3 of you.
well, it was, I mean, how do I say this way? It was pretty clear our roles. Like, as I like to say, Patrick, who's a 2-time Tony nominated stage actor and drama desk, and done 30 years of movies, and still the golden voice of Broadway. Well, in our band, he's the drummer.
I
So
love
Patrick
that.
plays the
And
drum,
you're the lead singer.
and then Mark plays the guitar, and I play the crowd. That's the fun part.
I love it. It's
Right?
the-
So that's
it's-
like we would when we started, it was my parents had a spare bedroom when we were in high school, and middle school, and we used to refer to it confessionally as 911. And we had a drum set up, and we had a Yamaha DX21, which is basically the sample sound of Jump. So all of a sudden, and we all played piano a little bit, I'm not very good at it, but I love it. And I played trumpet, and Mark played violin, then heard Eddie Van Halen. Then
Unbelievable.
violin goes down, guitar goes up. So we would just jam, and we would never finish a song when we were in high school. It was like, because we would argue, like, I'm singing that. No, you're singing that. Oh, you don't sound that good. I'm singing that. And next thing you know, Mark has a birthday. And so all of a sudden the music became like, well, let's play our Van Halen stuff. And, at least we like it. And I'm a big believer in that. Do what you want to
What you
do.
like.
Because
Absolutely.
if people like it, that's the bonus. But don't do it for others. I mean, share it.
No,
But,
absolutely. But
don't-
if you love it, people are going to love it, because if you love doing it, they're going to take to it.
And I
And
think
look what you.
that's the key. You got it,
I
Rhonda.
mean, and so it started with music. So where were you guys born? I don't know that. Are you from Florida?
No, we're all Virginians.
Virginia?
Mark and I were born in Richmond. Patrick was born in Newport News, Norfolk area. Dad was born in Big Stone Gap, the western
Yeah.
side of the state where we shot a movie we can talk about later.
Yes.
And then Mom was born in Greenville, South Carolina, but effectively grew up on the eastern shore of Virginia. So we're all Virginians. And,
Wow.
and they went to school together, Mom and Dad, at what was known as Richmond Professional Institute, or RPI, that is now Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond. And they
Wow.
were both in musical theater. And that's where they
Because I
met.
was going to ask if your father has musical talents as well, because I know your mother does. So he
My-
sings as well.
My father's the second coming of Robert Goulet.
What
And
a cool
yeah,
family.
Google that. Google Robert Goulet. You got to
I know
hear.
Robert
You got to
Goulet.
hear that voice.
No, that's amazing. Yes, but you also started an opera at 9. At least that's what your biography says.
Yeah, and that was another one of those you never know who's watching. And I was supposed to be the matinee kid, and it was a beautiful little Christmas operetta named called Amal and the Night Visitors, and it's a story about a kid who has a problem with his leg, and he uses a crutch, and then the 3 wise men, Balthazar, Casper, Melchior, all arrive at their house on the way to see the birth of Jesus, right? And I got nothing to give to the Son of God,
Yes.
but my crutch. And so I give them my crutch, and all of a sudden I can walk. And I was 9. I was just doing the
Wow.
matinee. The kid that was supposed to do it, who was a great singer, was 14. In the first weekend, he fell off the stage and broke his leg. So I had to do
for real?
it.
Wow. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
at
a great story. I mean, so you all just grew up. You came out of the womb, all of you performing. I mean,
Ready to go. Yeah.
you all ready to go. So did you ever want to start like a whole family? Okay. I always wanted television my whole life. Like, I grew up being a TV baby. So, I mean, did you ever think about doing a TV show all together? Like, what was the Partridge Family or something like that, where all of you all were performing, or that wasn't? Or you just wanted to go straight to film? Or at what point did you say, I want to do this as a career?
You never really do. I mean, I knew that I was going to do this in some shape or form. I love the media part, and growing up with your father, the first
Right.
time, the first time I met my father, really in the home after the obvious, being little and knowing him, usually every day was at 6 o'clock on a black and white Zenith TV. He was doing the news, so we were around that, and like that to me was normal. Cameras were normal, microphones
Cameras were normal.
That's all we knew, and because he was working in those days, especially the 70s and 80s, as you may remember, television was a grind, and it's a lot of work. I mean,
Especially news. It's such a grind. You have to be there so many hours and write your own
12 hours a
stories.
day. Yeah, I mean, he was there. He would get up, in the 11 noon range, go to work and work till 1 or 2 a.m. By that time, we get up and go to school in the morning as kids, and so we would miss him because he was sleeping after being up all night. So we never really saw him until we saw him on TV. But that was like our kind of first point of entry, if you will. Like, well, we can do that. Yeah, we can do that.
And going to the studio and being just behind us, I'm sure, like seeing him on the set of a news. I thought I was going to go into news at one point. I thought news was fabulous. I think it's so hard. I mean, and then it's really fascinating. Okay, so your brother Mark, he acts as well, but does he get to act, or is it the news just so all encompassing that he just doesn't have a chance? Except for the band, which is great.
It's funny. Mark, I think, is the best musician in the family. But even when we were, little kids growing up in mom's choirs, Mark would kind of lay back. Patrick and I were right there, right?
Your smile.
Mark would kind of lay back, but he was taking it all in. And so I think the ultimate irony is he kind of shied away from the cameras until after college at Florida State, when he studied mass communications and got his first job in TV news. I actually hired him at a radio station when I was the news director. And
background.
Kind of got out of the way. It was at college, and kind of got out of the way and kind of was like, he's good at this. And Mark now he's on television, 3 times a day, Monday through Friday. And it has been for almost 35 years.
That's amazing. So how did you guys come from Virginia down to Florida? I need to know that before getting into all your credentials.
In those kind of nomadic days of TV news, it was very much like military families. So in the, there was no cable television until 89-ish, right, of any real consequence.
Right.
So broadcast news and local news, and Dad, I don't. He's not here. Sometimes he's here, but if he's here, he's going to walk in the shot. But when a guy named David Hartman retired from Good Morning America, Dad tested for that host.
Wow.
That close, and more or less said, I can't bring my little kids to New York City, so I'm going to pass. And so, but then it went from Virginia, Newport News area, to Charlotte. We were there for almost 9 years, and Charlotte was a growing market. Then we went to St. Louis in the early
markets,
right? As that market was changing. And then what's interesting about St. Louis is that Tampa Bay was growing, right? And then St. Louis was shrinking. So they kind of flip-flopped. And then the family moved to Tampa Bay, and Dad came down first in like 82. We came down after the Cardinals won the World Series, which is an independent team. And we understand. So theoretically, we've kind of grown up here.
You've grown up here, and then you continue with all of your acting and your films. I mean, I have to look. I mean, there's so many, and I want to talk about Deer Camp, which is 86, which is out right now, which is theatrical release too, right? Deer Camp, along with streaming. Okay, we're gonna get to that. Yep. But I already said The First Lady, The Conjuring, which was your brother in that as well, Patrick, or that one was all by yourself?
Patrick is the star of that franchise, and it was our second movie together, and I was in the third one, which is known as The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It.
The Devil.
And it's, that's some heavy stuff for those horror fans that really like that world. And I think anything with demons and the devil and all that just, shakes your bones.
Oh, it shakes your bones. You're
and
right. That's a great. I
Being a
never,
part of that franchise, and now for me to be a part of it, it's the largest horror franchise of all time.
and it's amazing because I hosted films back in the '90s from '91 to '98, and a lot of horror films. And it's
I remember.
it's just on my little all night show, but it's amazing that whole genre, which has always been popular, but it seems like right now that whole resurgence of the '80s, '90s is really back. I feel like that's going on again. Like, I don't know if it's people that grew up with that and now they're at an age where it's kind of like it's a nostalgic feeling that they love.
You're
the
right.
horror genre.
You're right.
Right?
And I think, and nostalgia usually, well, most of the time always sells. And I think now, there was a while there where I just did a TV show that's set in the 70s. So I think we're seeing a lot of the 70s, 80s, and we'll soon see the
90s
90s.
now.
90s
I know.
You're the
I
90s
hope they
queen.
don't forget me. Although, it's so funny. I hosted Up All Night from '91 to '98, but I always had the big hair. So everybody put me in the '80s because the show started in '89 with Gilbert Gottfried. But the show, it was a '90s. I was a '90s baby. Although I did a lot of my television world in the '80s. But I mean, you're fascinating. So you stayed here and you act and you do so much film acting from in Tampa Bay and outside of it. So why didn't you ever, jump on a plane and move the family to LA or New York with your theater background as well?
The only way I can say it is I'm a homebody. And I wanted the dog. I wanted the yard. I wanted the family. I wanted the kids, the wife. I wanted the trappings of just normalcy because that's kind of when you go off to shoot a movie. And I've been very, very fortunate to be a part of that, especially not being in that Los Angeles population or even New York population.
Right.
Where there's, a lot of great people that are just, 99% of all actors are unemployed. Most of the time, right? And that's a rough go. And I kind of knowing the media and growing up in that, and I love advertising and I love the people part. Like I love the producing part, which is working around people. I mean, the acting part for me was never kind of narrow casted. I'm the walking hat rack as it is anyway,
I get it.
Focused
but
on.
You have to be, to really, you have the talent. Your whole family has the talent. But I don't think people realize that to really be successful as an actor, you have to have a bit of business behind you too. You have to think business wise. And so many today, you see that because they have their own brands or they've got their own products.
Sure.
But I don't think back in the day people realized that. I mean, my own brothers, when I went to LA, I think that they thought I sat around pools in the Beverly Hills Hotel drinking wine or whatever.
It's waiting around. That's all it is.
So not. I mean, I when I was in LA, you could knock on doors. You could sneak on the studio lots. You could sneak into commissaries. I mean, I got thrown out of many, but it was fabulous. What's good about today, and I know this is probably good for you, is that now, because of this little phone and COVID, you can pretty much put all auditions on tape, right? Or not on tape, but on whatever you call it, streaming. Yeah. You can call it in. I mean, it's good and bad because like I used to love and hate auditions because I hated walking in because I hated walking out because I never want anybody to look at my butt. I was very self-conscious about my butt, but you also got to smile and see people. Now you just send in that tape and that's it. So they don't get to see that gorgeous smile, but you're established. But I'm saying for someone new that's just starting, maybe a personality or a trait or who you are in person may get, may make you a little bit luckier as well. But we don't have those auditions anymore.
That was a big change. And I think a lot of us in that community, yearned for, well, why do I have to go? Let's just, let's just set up some lights and do it and record. But the, as you said, one of the problems is you can't make that human contact. And then, a thing called COVID arrived. And that really changed how entertainment is made from the very beginning,
Everything. Okay. Well, we have to get down too. I was just reading your biography, so excuse me for using cheat sheets. I was
Okay.
intrigued that you did Angels in America with your brother, Patrick, and that Mike Nichols was the director, and that he thought it'd be fun for you guys to appear together. What was it like working with Mike Nichols? That's so cool to me.
Again, that was one of those in the right place at the right time. I just came up to see Patrick, just to hang out with him. And he was doing Oklahoma on Broadway.
Ah.
And then in the mornings or during the day, he'd go shoot Angels in America. So he was really busy.
He was busy. A lot
And-
of memorization.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And switching characters is, it's not as hard as you think once you kind of lock in on it. But so once we got to Kaufman Astoria Studios over there in Queens, where they were shooting, where they shot, I mean, a legendary soundstage in Queens in New York. And I just wanted to support my brother. And
Yeah, visit him on the set.
then there's Al Pacino, and then there's
Oh.
Emma Thompson, and then there's Meryl Streep, and then there's Mike Nichols. And Mike Nichols' office at the studio was about 2,000 square feet, and he had this. He always had videotape playback of what they did, so he could watch it on his own. And Natalie Portman was there, and it was kind of funny because Natalie and I were sitting there talking, and a lot of people loved to go to a Mike Nichols set. I mean, he was known for that, and what an incredible! I mean, one of only a few that won them all, right? An incredible guy, genius of a human being, and we always felt kind of akin to him because his wife was Diane Sawyer, newswoman, news.
I
We
did
knew
not know
that,
that.
right? Because that was like that's a good point of reference. So, and we're sitting there, and Natalie's telling Mike, and Mike says something to the effect of, so you're finishing up your college degree. What are you doing? Well, I got to write this story, this essay about how playwrights create their product. This has a little autobiographical element to it. And I went, well, it's Arthur Miller. Arthur Miller's play, The Boy Who Had All the Luck, was about Arthur Miller wanting to play pro baseball, which he did, but his father favored his brother, and it created this great friction. And she looks at me like, that's a good idea. And then Mike, of course, runs down this beautiful, I was on the Nile with Ava Gardner and Frank Sinatra.
Oh my God.
Oh, yeah. But not like a name dropping kind of tacky.
No, right.
The elegance of Mike Nichols. I mean, one of a kind.
Right.
But then he said, and you're an actor too, Paul. And I went, well, yeah, but I'm just, it's nice. But
I'm just visiting him, just hanging out.
It would be hilarious to have you and your brother in the same scene. Let's put you over here. And I think her name was Carmen. She was a supermodel back in the 60s. And so I had a scene where I was trying to pick her up in the Oak Bar at the Plaza Hotel in New York.
Oh, yeah. Well, I remember that bar. Well,
But just watching the crew, the teamwork was just magnificent. And you got an incredible piece of work called,
like you said, like a master acting.
It was one of the most incredible weeks I ever had that I'd never intended to have.
And it's so funny because that just happened. Like you said, you were visiting. And it's amazing how a great stories from your life. I had a much smaller one, but I got to work with Mel Brooks in Spaceballs. I only had one line, but Mel Brooks, another one of those incredible genius directors, he cast every role, even if it was one line, he cast it. He didn't, it was just amazing. He had to meet you. And I read for a larger part, but he's like, no, you're not blonde. I'm like, I could wear a wig. Back then I was brunette. He goes, just show up on the set. I'm going to throw some lines at you. But he was magnificent.
Wow.
Work
That's
too.
amazing. That's awesome.
It was just great. I got a lot of stand-up comic friends auditions, and he auditioned everyone individually. And of course, people come up to me with all the things I've done, and they're like, "You were in Spaceballs," because it's another one of those cult films, and then they'll do my one line. I'm like, "Geez, and from everything I've done, people remember or know that one line." But I do love, once you're an actor, you're always an actor, and it never leaves you. It's in your blood. And even though I've been on Home Shopping Networks selling my own. Yeah,
right.
I've been selling my own line of undergarments and intimates for years, but nothing gets me more excited when, I've been tiptoeing a little bit back into acting and getting agents again. And it's like, because Jennifer Coolidge stole my career and I want it back. I love comedy, but I mean, have you done comedy? I'm looking at down. There's so many questions. First of all, do you like comedy?
Yes.
And because I feel like you're so perfect for that as well.
Yes, we did a cute little family movie here a year and a half ago, which they are seldom, if not, hardly ever happening in Florida, unfortunately, because we have no film incentive. But our local people do a very great job. Tyler and our local area has done a great job kind of incentivizing as best as they can from a county standpoint. But I played this.
I'd love to change that.
Maniac. This character was like this kind of maniac, mad scientist, and it's it's a family movie, so I can go completely over the top, and
so fun.
I do love that part. In fact, I kind of lean towards that. I just actually have an audition later today for a dark comedy that you're like, don't be the big Paul, be the dialed down Paul. So, but I love the crazy.
I know, because I feel like you could do those, like with that smile, you could do that funny evil character. I don't know. I love it with the spark. I don't know. I just see a lot. Okay, I've got to ask you. I go back to the first lady. So, did you audition to be? I mean, did you know someone? Did you audition for that? How did you find Richard Nixon in you? I don't see a resemblance.
This might go down so far as the best story of all time for me.
Okay,
because the writer who created the series, and it's a beautiful series. I mean, how it took how it took this long to tell perspective of being in the White House from the first ladies. I mean, it just baffles me.
Very cool. Very cool.
And so the first ladies that were picked in the first season were Betty Ford and Michelle Obama, and then Eleanor Roosevelt. So Betty Ford is Michelle Pfeiffer.
Unbelievable. My favorite. Wow.
Viola played Michelle Obama. And then Gillian Anderson was, as she is, unrecognizable as Eleanor Roosevelt. So obviously I'm in the series, the first couple with the Nixon years. And it's really about her, the impact of Gerald Ford going from, junior congressman from Michigan to vice president to president in like 47 months.
Oh,
and she did a lot of this. And we know that. And she did a lot to help people to, get off of that and to get better. Well, so the writer who created the series is a friend of mine. So it's like a Friday, Rhonda, like about 3 years ago, April. And he texts me and says, hey, we just fired our Richard Nixon. If you know any Nixons who could do Nixon, let me know. I'm like, well, send me the sides. And the sides, for those that don't know it, are just the lines of the scene for the auditioner, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's I'm not a crook. It's, all the famous Nixon lines. And I'm looking at this going, and then I think I have an idea. And jumping back to 1986, when I was in high school, I used to read the high school announcements as a senior as Richard Nixon.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I've been impersonating him for a long time. And Johnny Carson and Ronald Reagan. Anyway, so I'm like, he doesn't know that I can do this.
Oh my God.
I went back and it's the people got to know if your president's a crook. Well, I'm not a crook. Next question. And he was very hostile he hated talking to the press. He was an interesting guy, wherever you are politically. It was a very bright.
Oh, yeah. No, of course.
Right.
Oh
and so I sat there and went, well, he kind of hunches over like this. He uses his left hand a lot. And he's not very athletic. And, I found out that Richard Nixon couldn't afford he got into Harvard Law School, but his parents were poor and he grew up very poor. So they couldn't afford it. So then he stayed in, I think, Whitner in California, Laura Belinda, where he grew up, and then got a scholarship to Duke University.
Wow.
Law school. But ended up staying in a tool shed with no power and no water to save money because they had no money for it. So he became very industrious. I mean, he
He
was
driven,
very
driven. No doubt he was driven.
and he was going to get it done no matter what. And he worked. I mean, there's legendary stories about him, working till 3 a.m.,
Right.
sleeping for 3 hours, and then up again and working
Right.
till 3 a.m. all the time. I think it was actually Reagan who may have said the closest thing to the penal system for, non-convictors, those that were not convicted, is the White House, because you're working all the time. Well, so all of a sudden I was like, I could do this. So I cut the audition, sent it back to him. I said, here's your Richard Nixon.
I
And
love
he's
that
like,
story.
oh my God. Oh my God. And then I go home. It's like Friday night and he's in Los Angeles. So it's 7, 8 o'clock Eastern time, So I just go, oh, screw it. I'm going to go get in the pool, have fun, have a cocktail, whatever, play with my kids. My kids are home, for spring break. I'm cleaning the pool Saturday morning. And then my daughter walks out and goes, Dad, your phone's blowing up. Who's calling on a Saturday? I'm like, oh, 323-310. Ooh, hello. And it was like, we'd love to have you play Richard Nixon. Can you be in Atlanta by Monday? And that was it.
That's
That
a
was it.
great story. Well,
Yeah.
I was going to ask you about getting into characters, but no doubt that's where your musical ear, I love improv, but I don't have I'm musical and I can dance, but singers, you all can hear, accents and you can hear voices. And I love that were able to do that. But just when you did that, you became Richard Nixon. I imagine the makeup was pretty amazing too, but you just became Richard Nixon. And that's amazing.
There was one when they put some jowls on me. and I wanted to, and I didn't want, and here's another crazy story. It was 1989, and this beloved, beautiful venue here in Clearwater called Ruth Eckerd Hall was celebrating an anniversary. So they had some stars to come celebrate and, raise money to keep building. And one of them was Rich Little. And I was enamored with Rich Little.
I bet.
I could do Reagan all day long, and I would do it kind of like him. And of course, Johnny Carson was the best of all time.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
My dad was the MC of that event, and I just went along like, right, dopey sidekick. And I took my little Canon sure shot camera, and all of a sudden we're backstage, and there he was. Now Charlton Heston was there, Carol Channing was there, Tony Randall was there, Gregory Hines was there.
Oh, you must have been so excited.
But I locked on Rich Little, like, oh my God, right? And I'm 19, 20. And I'm like, Dad, I'm going to walk up to him. Here's the camera. I'm going to walk up to him and break into Reagan or Nixon. But you got to get this shot because this is it. And he comes out, he's doing this, and, his big, beautiful butterfly.
Yeah. I so remember him.
And I walk up to Rich Little. I said, well, Mr. President, you've inspired me. And he went just like that. He goes, I'm so glad I did, because it's more people like you that we need in the White House. And we just started doing this. And I'm looking back like,
you were
baby. Get it now. And I have the shot. It's the best thing ever.
That is, your stories are so good.
You're right. You're right about that because, I think half of, and I could impersonate, but you don't want to do that when this is a serious role. And I wanted to, he was somebody's granddad, somebody's husband, and dad, and make him human. And there's one way to do it, without being, this. I know they're usually impersonations are all meant to be funny.
No,
but
you researched and found him, and I imagine you do that on all of your roles. I mean, you are a serious actor, and it's very impressive. I mean, I want to know how you balance. You have an ad agency, is that what it is? And a production company? And how do you balance, and you're a daddy, but your kids are grown? Kids are
almost 22 and 20. So almost.
They never leave though.
No, and then that's a good thing.
No,
it's just, to me, it's all linked, Rhonda, so it is a lot of spinning plates, but it's not.
But you love it. I can see it.
It's all the same. It's all the same.
Love it.
I mean, even with like working on a movie as a producer, then it turns into marketing. Well, guess what? I know how to do that too. So that's a fun.
It's the business side. I mean, you have that as a real business, but that's what actors don't do is they don't think, I think when they're starting, I just want to be a star. They don't realize it's the whole ball of wax that nowadays, especially with everything streaming, you have to even, I mean, look at these stars. They're out there making all these, you know, these press trips all over the world. And that's what you have to do. But I
Right.
do want to ask you about your latest film, Deer Camp 86, which I just read a tiny bit about. I know it's got the horror, it's not comedy, but it also talks about losing so many thousands of indigenous females a year. And, you know, I've kind of like picked up on this from the series, actually from the, was it the 1883 series? I don't know which one. But just hearing how we treated the indigenous women of yesteryear and people and just in general. So I'm really intrigued with that.
For hundreds of years.
Hundreds of years. And so I feel ignorant and I would like to learn more, but how does that play in? If you can just give us a little synopsis so we can all either run to the theater, because I heard it's streaming. I mean, it's live in theaters in 1,700
Yes.
theaters,
Yes.
along with where can we find it?
And in early July, it'll soon be everywhere on all streaming devices. So
That's
let's
great.
let's maybe
Yeah,
take a
tell me-
look.
Take me through. Yeah,
Trailer.
yeah, we'll look at it.
The buck stops here.
Come on, let's get to camp before dark, Buck.
Tough titties, my liver's itching.
Let's get those drinks in the air and make it tough. To the high!
All right, Joe. Pulled one deer tag before we even got out of the truck. They smell that. Oh!
You boys were at the Peace Pipe last night, weren't you? Bartender was found murdered this morning. Too many of our girls go missing. Outsiders come up here and take more than venison.
We did not come up here to get in any trouble, Your Honor.
There's no hiding from the sins committed on these lands.
He's playing with us. Words pray.
Where are you going? I'm going back to Detroit, where it's safe.
It's a comedy, by the way. No, it's
No.
it's
Oh
a
my God,
fun-
you're so good in that character.
it's
You're
a
not
fun.
this
Thank you.
guy at all.
It's the mustache, maybe. It's a fun romp. It's in the vein of those kind of classic 80s horror movies. It's not a slasher, so there's not that.
No, you can see it.
Um,
I can't wait to see it.
Well, and now you remember in that little trailer you saw that billboard, right? You remember that billboard?
Yes, the billboard with the girls.
The headline
I
was
think so.
"Have you seen us?" So that's how this started, and it was during COVID. And we didn't really know early on in 2020 what COVID really was going to do to America, if not the world. And so the writers, friends of mine, called me and said, "Hey, let's do something. Let's do something small." And we saw these billboards that said, "Have you seen her?" And
Wow.
I'm like, "Where are you? What?" In Michigan. It's all about raising awareness for missing and murdered Indigenous girls and women.
God.
And they were inspired by it. I mean, like white dudes were sitting there going, "We should learn more about this. And this is a problem." So that became kind of the seminal moment of let's tell a story. And it's not a cause movie. Don't get me wrong. And it's kind of like
It's awareness, though. I love the awareness.
well, and that's what drew me to it, because at the end of the day, it reminded me of, we made this crazy horror romp that feels familiar, kind of like the classic Schwarzenegger's Predator. It feels like that. But when we really kind of got into it, it was, to us, it reminded us of kind of like, we all have pets, right? Or have had, if not have. And you got to give your pet a medicine sometimes, a little pill sometimes. You wrap it up in cheese or peanut butter. That's kind of what horror is. The good ones, they have a message there. And like I said, it's not gratuitous violence. There is some justified violence, but it's all, to me, it's all really a fun story about, 6 guys in 1986 go rent a cabin on opening weekend of deer season and decide to stop at a bar and not listen to a barmaid who happens to be Native American, who gives them kind of the look, make it a merciful kill, respect the land. You're on our land, not yours. And you're never going to be on your land. It's our land. Right. And they disobey. And then let's say justice is rendered.
Wow.
And I'm the sheriff that kind of starts to poke at it and go, wait a minute, she was found dead and you guys were there. So these city slickers from Detroit get into this bar fight with the locals, and we shot the whole thing up there in kind of middle, upper northwest Michigan. Wow. And it was gorgeous. It was gorgeous. And we had such a good time. And I think it's a good story that people will enjoy. I mean,
I think it's going to be incredible. I really do. I think your timing of this is amazing. Who ended up writing, since it kind of came out of a group of friends, who wrote the script? It looks just captivating.
Harold Kronk and Eric Mashila. Those two are really the creative force behind all of this. And Harold Kronk is a great director, as is Eric Mashila. Harold Kronk's most known for working and directing those movies known as the God's Not Dead franchise.
Oh my goodness.
And he wanted to kind of tell a local story and get into something that was a bit of a departure from his, Christian family movies. And then he and Eric crafted this great script, and they came to me and said, can we pull this off? And I said, I think we can. Let's figure it out. It turned into.
So are you a producer on this as well?
Yes.
You are.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I helped get some other team together and some, financing, which is always the worst part, but the hardest part and the most important part. And then we're in the middle of COVID. So, we're all wearing masks. So it's like, okay, we need to find if anyone gets sick, we're screwed. Right. So we had really good protocols. And I think we might've been one of the only movies shot during COVID.
Wow. That's amazing. That's truly amazing. But you were outdoors a lot too. Hope that, we didn't know anything back then though.
That's right. That's right. It was September, October, September of 2020. So we really didn't know.
Wow.
Early.
Yeah, that's really early. I know we knew anything. Better that you didn't know that much.
And we had that's the thing. We made it for basically like $4 and a bucket of chicken. I mean, we have a
it looks really rich and beautiful.
In fact, there's this great practical effect where we rolled this truck. You got to see.
Josh, you good? Good. Okay, guys. Let me do the rolling. Here we go. Take 3, 2, 1, action!
I'm impressed.
It looks easy.
So, Paul, tell me about the truck. It was like the everything truck, the camera truck. So what happened when it went away?
It was our picture car, Rhonda. So, again, this is no big studio movie. So we had a lot of friends, Rob Alway, Becky Alway, all those people up there that like, oh, I have a farm. I can get you a car. And, we're set in the 80s. Which, by the way, we didn't want people using cell phones to kind of truncate scenes. You had to talk to people, right?
Right. Good.
So we found this vehicle that became the beast. That was the picture car that the guys were seen in, and we used the entire movie. And at the end of the shoot, after we shot all the picture, sequences in the car, in the truck, I think it was like an 85 or 86 Chevy Suburban. They sold the engine to reduce weight.
Right.
And then we had this idea. What if we have our forest spirit, which that's all I'm gonna say about it, not to give it away.
I love forest spirit.
Goes up, rolls it like it's just a matchbox car. And so that was one take because it went into the ravine and there's no way getting it out. I think it took a crane to get it out. But
it was amazing. That is amazing. I am so excited to see Swamp Camp 86. Of course, I'm a baby of the 80s. I love it. You didn't need big hair. You were sheriff. The cast looks great. It looks very rich. I mean, it looks like a very rich, big film. And I know that on July 9th, you are going to be able to see this film everywhere, every theater, every streaming device. You can get it on Blu-ray, any place else.
And we think that Deer Camp 86 could be, especially for, those that like this kind of fun horror romp comedy.
Many.
Right.
All my friends and family and fans, they're alone.
It might be a little collectible. I'll be happy to, and Noah Lalonde, let's not forget Noah Lalonde. Noah Lalonde, who's become really, he's a superstar, but he's the lead, he's the hero in this movie. And he was on that great Netflix show, Life with the Walter Boys. But he and I have had so much fun talking about this movie. And he's from Michigan, like the entire crew. I'm the only Floridian that was involved, really, except for the funder, Antonia Morris, who's from Tampa, who really wanted to be involved with it. So he is. He has a great little cameo in it, too. So it takes a community sometimes, Rhonda, right?
No, it does take a community. I like that it's about guys, because back in the day, before the whole Me Too movement, that would have been all girls out there, and it would have been just like gratuitous, everything showing. So you've got these men in the woods. But I do like the guy who says, I'm going back to Detroit where it's safer. I mean, that's pretty funny.
Arthur, the great Arthur Cartwright, who has that, I think, the best line in the whole movie that became kind of one of the title lines on the posters and all the marketing, which, he's the smart one. Once they take eyes on what is haunting and hunting them, he's the first, and he records it on his little VHS camera, right? It's the 80s, which, by the way, some of that stuff was shot with an old, high VHS camera to give it that look.
I love that feeling. It's such a spooky, scary feeling.
I have that camera sitting right there, so it's like, well, I think I paid $200 for that camera back in 1990,
Oh my gosh.
Right. So
it's going to give it that real feel. I think that you're bringing back, there's definitely going to have to be a Swamp Camp 87 after 86, because I feel like this is going to take off.
Swamp Camp's a good idea. We're thinking about Bear Camp.
Oh, I just said Deer Camp. You know what it is? I'm from New Orleans. Did I say? I did say.
No. You may have tripped over brilliance.
Camp.
You may have tripped over brilliance because it's Deer Camp, right? And then we're thinking Bear Camp, but I like Swamp Camp, gators, and like three-legged dogs. Oh yeah, I love that idea. I love
indigenous people too. Okay, and look, this is the way I'm casting myself in it.
There you go. There you go.
I'm from
Louisiana. You're the Bayou girl. You're the Bayou girl sitting there waiting for us. There you go.
Now you have to go look up, Paul, and see if Swamp Camp has ever been taken. But I think it is a good name. I like it. You could just go through all the animals. Then you could do Duck Camp.
Look at you. There you go. There's the business. There's the businesswoman. There she is right there.
I like the marketing side. I'm really excited for you and all of your success, your whole family success. I would love to hear the band, the family band. I would love to meet your mom and your dad. You all sound like an amazing family. I love that I got to meet you. And you were so sweet that day that we had our portraits painted. But truly, I would love to work with you. And I just wish you the very, very best with this film and onward from there. And I love your spirit, not the haunted spirit that we're going to see in the film, but this spirit of happiness and joy and wanting to make, people happy. So I thank you so much for being with me today. I really do.
Thank you. And let's make it an effort to work together.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. I want to be your older, I want to be the older flirty, like move over, Jennifer Coolidge. I'm going to flirt with Paul. Thank you so much for coming and spending time and spending some great story and telling some great stories. And I'll see you soon in person. But I'm going to be seeing not Swamp Camp, but Deer Camp 86 on July 9th. And everybody go see it. Get it.
Thank you. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, honey. Thanks. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Hi, it's Rhonda Shear, and you may remember me from USA. Up all night. Did I get you through puberty when you were a mere teenager? Were you sneaking down the stairs and putting the TV on at 10 p.m. or later and watching those sexy films? Ooh, I bet that was me and you were doing that. Anyway, you can book me at cameo.com/Rhonda Shear, and I will have a private message for you. Anyway, book me on cameo.com/Rhonda Shear.
Hi, I'm Rhonda Shear, host of USA Up All Night.
And I'm Gilbert Gottfried, host of USA Up All Night.
I'll show you lots of fun movies.
I'll show you lots of fun movies.
I do it Friday.
I do it Saturday. We both do the same thing, only different.
USA Up All Night. The same, but different.
Comfort, support, confidence. That's what you'll find at rhondashear.com. Shop award-winning intimates, shaping, and apparel in sizes extra small through 3X.
Stuck at home and you don't know what to do. Hold on, baby, Rhonda Shear's got you. Grab your computer, log on, baby, you got the power. It's the Rhonda Shear Social Live. It's the Rhonda Shear Social Live.